Spanish historian John Langdon Davies wrote, "From the day of his birth, they were waiting for his death. He died drooling on silk sheets, choking on spit he couldn't swallow, his belly swollen, legs split open and leaking pus. Centuries of royal incest left Spain's last Habsburg king deformed in mind and body before the grave could claim him. Some blame witches, others blame poison. But when Charles II of Spain took his final breath, his mind broken, his body rotting, everyone knew the real curse was a dynasty so inbred it rotted from the inside out. No cure, no heir, just a corpse so corrupted that surgeons found a heart the size of a peppercorn. They found lungs eaten through, blackened testicles, intestines rotting alive, and a skull full of fluid where his brain should have been. Today, we reveal the grotesque final days of Charles II of Spain, one of history's most pitiful monarchs, whose bloodline doomed his body before he ever sat on the throne. Charles Habsburg was born November 6, 1661. In some accounts, he seemed almost normal, polite, soft-spoken, with a shy, gentle manner. He enjoyed going on hunting excursions, and a diplomat from Savoy wrote that he was affable and generous, though slow and uncertain. How then did this quiet, well-meaning prince die half-mad and soaked in rot, his head full of water and his empire dead along with him? As the empire shattered beneath him and foreign powers rushed to divide the corpse of Spain. The turning point came in 1677 when Charles turned 16 and still couldn't chew solid food or speak clearly. His Habsburg jaw had grown so distended that he drooled when he tried to talk. His tongue filled his mouth. His voice came out slurred, wet, and childlike. He was the most powerful man in Spain, but couldn't sign his own name. Courtiers looked away when he entered. His breath carried the scent of decay. He was so gaunt, so frail, so pale, that one observed he looked like a walking corpse. That same year, his mother ordered him to lie beside the disinterred corpse of his father, King Philip IV, hoping some royal strength might pass into his body. The boy was obedient. He laid beside the bones and said nothing. That year also marked a shift in how Spain ruled. His mother, Mariana of Austria, tightened her hold on court decisions. Every word from the boy king was filtered, explained, or ignored. He was dressed by servants and carried through the palace. Rumors circulated that he was bewitched, too broken to function without supernatural interference. They whispered his true name behind palace doors, El Hechizado, the bewitched one. He was forced to fast. Priests surrounded him at night, praying for demons to leave his body. Some whispered that even if they did, there'd be nothing left worth saving. One exorcism that drew attention saw friars chanting into his ear and sprinkling holy water on his chest. Desperate acts by men convinced they were battling the devil's grip on their king. Beyond the palace walls, foreign ambassadors mocked Spain's ghost king in secret letters, whispering he was more corpse than monarch, unfit to breed dogs, let alone heirs. At court, nobles traded jokes behind heavy drapes, wagering how long before Europe carved up his rotting crown. With each year, his body twisted further. He developed hydrocephalus, his skull swelled, his limbs curved inward and his spine compressed. He could not remain upright without support. He fell often. Historians say he measured just over 5 feet and weighed no more than 50 kilograms, a little over 110 pounds. A deformed scrap of flesh forced to wear a king's crown while his own body rotted from jaw to gut. He was once found in a hallway after collapsing face first, bleeding from the nose, unable to speak. He aged into a figure both regal and absurd. Royal robes hung off a man who could barely walk 10 steps. His tailors secretly stuffed the royal garments to stop them from slipping off his skeletal frame. Inside the king's chambers, the air curdled with a permanent stench of spoiled food, bile, and infection. Servants scrubbed vomit basins and changed soiled sheets through the night. Yet the odor never left the velvet drapes. Some refused the midnight shift outright, whispering that tending to El Hechizado at night was a curse that clung to the soul. His diet did him no favors. Despite chronic vomiting, diarrhea, and digestion so weak that his meals often passed undigested, the kitchen served him rich stews, heavy game, and sweet bread soaked in wine. After meals, his stomach swelled grotesquely. He was sometimes wheeled away mid-banquet, pale and sweating. Servants reported the smell, sour, intestinal, and constant. His physicians responded with horror disguised as care. They bled him frequently. They prescribed purgatives that left him shaking for days. They forced raw meat between his lips and called it a cure. When his gums swelled and peeled, they blamed his spirit. When his nose began to collapse, they blamed the stars. His stools turned black. His urine came out thick and red. Still, they insisted his condition was improving. At 18, he married Marie Louise of Orleans. She was elegant, beautiful, and appalled. Reports from court described her crying in bed and gagging at his breath. Servants once found Marie Louise collapsed on a marble stair, her silk gown soaked with tears and wine that she drank to forget the bed she shared with him. When he tried to consummate the marriage, he collapsed from exhaustion. She died 9 years later, thin and joyless. Some blamed poison, others said grief. Her replacement, Maria Anna of Nuremberg, was told her family's fertility record would fix the royal line. She never conceived. She took to sleeping in a separate room, claiming the king's touch gave her headaches. Behind closed palace doors, Maria Anna grew distant and cold, no mistaking the tension between them, and she once had her German ladies-in-waiting sharing her bed, openly preferring their company to his diseased presence. Charles lost what little strength he had. By 30, he was almost blind. By 32, he could no longer eat without choking. His hair fell out in clumps. His body swelled with fluid. His mouth trembled constantly. Visitors described a monarch whose lips moved without words, whose hands fluttered at invisible threats, who stared through people instead of at them. Modern doctors have diagnosed everything from hydrocephalus to Fragile X syndrome to a rare metabolic disorder. His inbreeding coefficient was higher than that of the child of siblings. His bloodline had collapsed into itself. His brain was underdeveloped. His testicles were atrophied. Charles' paranoia deepened as his condition worsened. He dismissed longtime attendants, convinced their glances carried hidden threats. Whispers passed through the palace halls, warning that a dropped spoon or a wrong prayer might lead to exile. Most chillingly, he ordered his own aunt confined for suggesting he seek new physicians. While Charles still gasped for breath, the palace corridors buzzed with bribes and whispered betrayals. Courtiers sold secrets to French and Austrian envoys, each hoping to carve a future from the carcass of Spain's dying king. In his own house, loyalty rotted faster than his flesh. His fierce spells became a fixation. He performed daily rituals, placing bread on altars and reciting charms before meals. His garments were inspected for hidden curses. This routine may have reflected deepening superstition or the effects of mounting neurological damage. As the end approached, Charles's suffering reached almost unimaginable levels. In his final months, he could no longer walk, even with help. Fluids collected in his leg, swelling them until the skin split and leaked. The royal court became a place of stench and silence, with courtiers pressing cloths to their faces while pretending not to notice the man collapsing before them. During his last winter in 1699 to 1700, the king's health deteriorated rapidly. He suffered from persistent chills, likely caused by fluid pressing on his brain. His speech became increasingly slurred, and episodes of confusion became frequent. Witnesses reported that during these moments, he clutched at the air and called out for his mother, who hovered just outside the chamber, listening to every word. Curiously, despite his obviously terminal condition, no one at court dared suggest that the king was dying. Spanish superstition held that to name death was to invite it, so physicians and courtiers insisted he was just exhausted, even when the smell of something rotting had begun to settle over his bed. On October 30th, 1700, sensing that time was running out, Charles agreed to let the priests administer the last rites. He could no longer speak, and his mouth barely closed. When asked if he accepted the will of God, he blinked once. That was the final movement anyone could be sure of. During the following days, while the body awaited burial, one of the most disturbing episodes associated with Charles' death took place. The autopsy revealed what the living had long suspected. His heart, once thought weak, was barely larger than a peppercorn. His lungs had softened and torn, disintegrating at the edges. The intestines were blackened, gangrenous, so fragile that they split open under the surgeon's fingers. There was only one testicle, shriveled and dark. When they opened his skull, fluid spilled out where brains should have been. Surgeons wrote down what they found, but they locked their notes in palace archives. No official dared reveal every rotting detail. Some horrors, they agreed, belong only to God. The king, who had ruled in silence, feared demons in his sleep, and failed to produce an heir, ended as a swollen, disfigured shell of a human being. The funeral finally took place on November 3, 1700, nearly a week after his death. Despite the odor that seeped from the coffin, the ceremonies proceeded with a solemnity expected for a Catholic king. Monks burned sticks of incense day and night, but the reek of rotting flesh soaked into velvet drapes and clung to the chapel walls long after his coffin was sealed shut. He was buried in the El Escorial monastery, beside his parents, without a child to follow him and no heir to bear the name he dragged into ruin. Ironically, the child upon whom Spain had placed all its hopes, the last direct heir of the Habsburg line, would live longer than expected but produce nothing. Charles II ruled for more than 3 decades, yet left no successor. The crown passed not to a son, nor to a brother, but to a Bourbon prince, triggering a continental war that would devour what remained of Spain's crumbling empire. The grotesque decline of Charles II serves as a powerful reflection of dynastic decay. The king, born to rule the greatest empire on earth, was too sick to speak clearly and too weak to consummate a marriage. His death was not just the end of a life, but the final toll of a lineage stretched past its limits. Spanish historian John Langdon Davies wrote, "From the day of his birth, they were waiting for his death." His court, once filled with protocol and promise, descended into rituals of desperation, holy relics, whispered incantations, and futile diets of prayer. He was pitied in public, cloistered in private, and protected from truths his body already knew. What remained was not a king, but a symbol of a bloodline in collapse, stretched to its final thread and left trembling on the throne. The transformation of Charles II from child monarch to incapacitated shadow remains one of the most disturbing examples of royal decline. His legacy, an empire so vast it once claimed to never see the sunset, fractured into pieces, and his body, grotesque and bloated, symbolized what Spain had become, a shell of former greatness trapped in ritual and rot. The last years of Charles' life, defined by delusions, failed exorcisms, and whispered succession plans, stood in contrast to the golden portraits commissioned to prove his vitality. This gap between image and reality, repeated across every court painting and public appearance, became the central lie of his reign, and like all lies, it could not last. The man who once sat at the center of the Catholic world ended in a locked room, unable to speak, while foreign ambassadors argued over which dynasty would inherit his body and crown. The myth of a divinely chosen ruler collapsed in silence. The monarchy, once ordained by heaven, was reduced to a question of treaties. The final irony of Charles's life is that the dynasty obsessed with purity destroyed itself from within. In the pursuit of an unbroken line, the Habsburgs broke the body meant to carry it forward. Charles's birth was a triumph of bloodline. His reign was a demonstration of its consequences. Perhaps the clearest lesson in Charles's life is that no amount of control, genetic, political, or religious, can outmaneuver biology. His advisors blamed curses and devils. His physicians blamed bile and imbalance. But in the end, what doomed him was simple. He was born too late to change and too broken to continue. The death of Charles II is not just a story of a sick man, but a nation that refused to see itself clearly. His deformities were mirrored by his empire, crippled, exhausted, and governed by ghosts. In Charles, we see not just a monarch's collapse, but a warning. Power decays fastest when it refuses to adapt. In the end, Spain's last Habsburg did not just lose a crown, he was devoured from within by the very blood he was born to protect.